In the 7th chapter of our book, the journey of rediscovering the Bible's wonder comes full circle in this chapter that contains fish stories. The fisher people among us know it's easy to slip into telling exaggerated tales of how one bravely hauled in a fish after a great struggle, or of the big one that got away. It makes sense that so much of the Bible is made up of stories about fishing, fishermen, and meals that involve fish. Many of the disciples were fishermen before they were called by Jesus to leave their nets and follow him. The Bible tells stories of Jesus telling Peter to take a coin out of a fish's mouth to pay for his taxes. It tells of times when Jesus took one person's meal of fish and bread and blessed it and used it to feed thousands. And of course, if we're talking about fish stories, we can't forget Jonah. I've always liked the fish story in John, where Jesus tells the disciples to cast their nets on the other side of the boat or into deeper waters. Now, I always imagine Peter's frustration in that moment, since he's been fishing all night with no luck, and he fancies himself an expert fisherman. See, the disciples had indeed passed the whole night and had caught nothing. And then Jesus appears to them and directs them to cast the fishing net on the other side of the boat. They reluctantly do so. And suddenly they were found not able to even haul the net onto the ship, as the net was so filled with fish. Jesus, as you recall, is tending to some fish roasting over a fire on the beachside and instructs the disciples to bring over some of their catch. And so the net was dragged ashore, and we're told that there was 153 large fish. What a catch it was. Now, to some, this story is, well, maybe a bit fishy. Is this not a typical fisherman's exaggeration? Perhaps by some stroke of luck, the disciples had netted a passing school of fish. But why would they have counted them? Using our sanctified imagination, the tally of 153 is not really fancy math or an illusion. It's another detail that can be interpreted in a variety of ways. We can get fancy and technical and say that the number 153 in rabbinic numerology signifies completion and perhaps corresponds to a specific prophecy in Ezekiel that describes a great river full of all kinds of fish flowing out of a restored temple. Early Christian art depicts Peter and John holding a net on either side of a stream flowing from the temple, suggesting that they may have made that connection too. Or we can just go for a simpler explanation that says the followers of Jesus were to be fishers of men all over the globe until the fullness is gathered up into the kingdom. And what better confirmation of this than a perfect catch of fish just before Jesus departs for heaven? Both interpretations that we just mentioned are valid and appropriate. As Evans extrapolates from this story, the apostles remembered what many modern Christians tend to forget, that what makes the gospel offensive isn't who it keeps out, but who it lets in. Evans goes on to quote Dallas Willard here. We don't believe something by merely saying we believe it, he said, or even when we believe that we believe it. We believe something when we act as if it were true. So perhaps a good question for us in Lent is, am I acting like I am a follower of Jesus? Am I including the people who are typically excluded? Am I feeding the hungry and caring for the sick? Am I holding the hands of the homeless and offering help to the addicted? Am I working to break down religious and political barriers that marginalize ethnic, religious, and sexual minorities and people with disabilities? Am I behaving as though life is more than just a meaningless, chaotic mess? The transformative journey Evans outlines in this chapter underscores the lasting impact the Bible can have when approached with openness and curiosity. Rather than seeing it as a closed book with all the answers neatly tied up, we can view Scripture as a dynamic dialogue partner. This approach fosters a relationship that grows and evolves, much like the meaningful conversations that deepen our love for God and one another. I hope that you can receive a great catch because of this study and your conversations with others.